Uncontrolled airspace is airspace that ATC does not provide service for due to the inability to, or because it's simply just not necessary for them to control it. Classes of uncontrolled airspace include one single class, and that is Class G. Uncontrolled airspace is the airspace that we, as remote pilots, never have to get authorization to fly in because it's uncontrolled. ATC does not provide their service in that specific type of airspace. Class G is always the airspace that we as remote pilots like to fly in just because we do not have to get pre-approval to do that specific flight operation. Now, we're going to start getting into the different types of uncontrolled airspace altitudes for Class G. There's a few different ones that we are going to look at. But first, we need to know the different types of airspace altitudes. The first one is above ground level, or AGL, and it's simply the height measured from above ground level. So if you see in the image to the right, you'll notice the plane icon above a mountaintop. Well, if you were to measure the mountaintop to the plane, that would be your above ground level number. So for instance, let's say that plane was 200 feet above the top of the mountain. It would simply be 200 feet above ground level. Now, this is when we get into mean sea level. Now, MSL is the height measured above standard sea level. So for instance, let's say that mountain was 400 feet above sea level. And now the airplane is still 200 feet above ground level, above the top of that mountain. So technically, that aircraft would be 600 feet above sea level because it's measured from the standard sea level number. It's no longer measured from above ground level. These are the two different altitudes that you will see when we deal with the different types of airspace altitudes. There are three different types of Class G altitudes that we might see as remote pilots. First one is surface to 700 feet above ground level. The next, which is typically the one you see as a remote pilot, is surface to 1,200 feet above ground level. The next and last one is surface to 14,500 feet mean sea level. However, this is very rare to see, and it's not included in this video series just because now that Class G ending at that altitude is very hard to find within the United States, especially trying to find it on a VFR sectional chart. Now, let's begin with Class G from the surface to 1,200 feet. This is typically the Class G that you usually see and that you usually operate in as a remote pilot. So it's surface to 1,200 feet above ground level and is depicted on a VFR sectional chart without any symbols or other designations. So on the image to my right, there is no other symbol for any other type or class of airspace. That simply means that Class G starts at the surface and goes to that 1,200 foot AGL number. Now, we deal with a little bit of a lower altitude. Class G, surface to 700 feet above ground level, and that is depicted on a VFR sectional chart with a magenta vignette, also known as a shaded area. So on the image to my right, Class G, inside that magenta shade, that magenta vignette, it starts at surface and now goes up to 700 feet above ground level. So it's actually dropped 500 feet. And the reason why this is because we have another class of airspace that you'll see later on in this video series that starts at that 700 foot number. Just like Class G starting at the surface to 1,200 feet. Once Class G gets up to that 1,200 foot number, another class of airspace starts. This is important to remember because there is no such thing as empty airspace. If one airspace ends, another one simply begins. In our next video, we are going to be taking a look at controlled airspace and what controlled airspace means for us as remote pilots and what we have to do to enter into that controlled airspace.